Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry. Hello, and welcome to this episode of All Things Book Marketing. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and our special guest today is Aryn Van Dyke, the book marketing consultant and author coach behind Book Rockstar. Hi, Aryn.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to talk to you on the podcast because we actually work together on multiple clients. So I talk to you all the time, but now we get to talk to each other in front of an audience.
I know. I can't wait.
Tell us more about what you do and how you help authors to start off.
Yeah, so what you said was exactly right. Book marketing consultant, author coach. And so really my main purpose is helping authors learn marketing strategies that can help them rock their book launch or rock their book promotion. So this I mainly do through teaching, coaching, consulting on marketing strategy specifically, because a lot of authors, they're experts in their field, they've got the writing part down, and then it gets time to be like, okay, well, now what do I do with this product that I've created? How can I actually get it in front of people? So that's where I come in and just help them really clarify their message and who they're trying to reach, how they can be reaching them, and then working with them and creating a custom marketing plan that fits their goals for their book launch, and usually unlocking different ideas and strategies that maybe they hadn't thought of, at the very beginning. It's always shocking to me, saying, oh, how about we try this, or what do you think of this idea? And for me, it feels like, oh, maybe this is something they've already thought of, but I feel like there's a lot of times where it's like, oh, like what a great idea. I would have never thought of that. So it's, I like just to think about it, in that kind of coaching consulting realm, because a lot of the times it's just helping them unlock the tools that they have access to, that they don't realize they can be using that for marketing, and helping them, reach their goals with their book through these tools that they probably already have in their toolbox.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like for a lot of authors or writers, aspiring authors, the goal is the book, but they don't realize that there are their goals for what to do with the book. So, New Year's resolution, write a book. And we're over here dedicating a whole podcast episode to New Year's resolution, what to do with your book.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
So what are some popular book goals that authors should consider, or I guess that are popular among authors?
Yeah. Well, so the obvious one, and the one that everyone thinks of first, is sales. And of course, sales are important. That's really, that's kind of the ultimate goal. And then I like to say there's some other more like micro goals that fall under that can be just as beneficial for authors. So there's increasing personal brand. There's increasing business. There's creating new business opportunities. And then for some authors too, the goal is really just to impact or change lives with the message that they've written. And that's mainly coming from, I've got a very, nonfiction based background. So a lot of, what I teach and kind of coach on is from the nonfiction perspective. But there's authors who they're writing self-help books or professional growth books, or even memoirs, that they just want to make an impact. They want to help someone else change the course of their life, in whatever realm or aspect that's in. So there's so many types of goals that can fall under that umbrella of sales, because you increase your personal brand, that helps lead to increased sales. Like you can create new business opportunities, like maybe a speaking engagement in front of 500 people, that can help you increase your sales. So there's just a lot of different like micro goals to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the breadth of goals and the different pieces of it. Like some of them are more trackable, like goals, reviews, engagement, speaking opportunities, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
others are more nebulous, changing lives is a goal, impacting someone is a goal,
Yeah.
changing the way someone thinks about something, that's a goal. And I like that they work together more often than
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the more you can do the trackable goals, the more you can have with those kind of emotional impact goals. If you're writing a book that shares how to do something or how to get from point A to point B, you can have kind of two in one. You can have like the trackable goals of, oh, I've had these new opportunities that have led to another 500 book sales, but also that means that that's another 500 people who are potentially going to be going from point A to point B and having that life change that you wrote the book for that reason, right?
Yeah. And then now that we kind of defined goals and listed some examples, let's talk about why it's important to set goals for your book. Why can't we just write a book, publish it, and then let it exist out in the world? Why do we have to continue to set goals?
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I mean, you can think about it on a very basic level, is that it's easier to kind of follow a path and follow a plan when you know where you want to go. So I mean, I think about it sometimes like the whole, marketing strategy, even like a road trip. Like you've got that goal destination in mind, and you might even have pit stops along the way saying, oh, I want to drive, out to California from New York. And on the way, I want to stop at Wall Drug. I want to stop at the Grand Canyon. Yeah. So like you can make like little kind of pit stops along the way. But in order to do that, you have to have that plan. So it's that's kind of like at the basis of the importance is it helps you actually visualize and conceptualize where you're headed. But I think even more than that, it's important to set goals that are going to be realistic, that you can actually say, all right, I can reach this first, and then I can work on getting to this next bit. Because when you're actually able to accomplish a goal, or kind of put that big check mark next to on your to-do list, it does something to you mentally, and it says, oh, I just did that, now I can keep going and kind of hit that next milestone. So it's not only just importance of creating a kind of a plan to get to the goals, but making sure that it includes the kind of realistic pit stops along the way to say, yes, I'm checking this off, and I can now move on to the next bit with a lot of confidence and a lot of momentum.
Breaking up the big goals into bite-sized chunks is absolutely 100% what I would recommend too. I have almost a Pavlovian response to the ding that my computer makes when I check something off my to-do list. Like it's just so rewarding to see, yes, I'm making progress, as opposed to, my big goal is successful 2024 year for Smith Publicity. And then I have to wait until 2025 to decide if that goal was reached or not, as opposed to, no, like this, we've met this checkbox, we've done this, we have this, and then you get to interact with it more along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So what do you think are some of the most important goals for authors to be setting in 2024? What are some New Year's resolutions they can make for their books?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I think all authors are going to think about is sales. But again, there's a lot of micro goals that fall under that, and I think that's what authors should be planning out, especially for 2024, to say, all right, the overall goal is sales, but I can start reaching that goal by doing, X, Y, Z. So one goal someone could make is just getting more consistent about posting on social media or sending out an email newsletter. So take a stock of what you did in 2023. If you were posting once a week, maybe twice a week, can you start with 3 a week in 2024? Can you get to 4 or 5 times a week? Maybe if you're even posting once a month, can you get it to then weekly and start increasing kind of week over week, month over month? On that in the same vein, it's setting, I want to have X amount of impressions on my social media posts per week. Because if you can be kind of posting consistently and with frequency, you can say, all right, well, I want to reach 2,000 people, with my social media posts, or I want to reach 8,000 people a week with my social media. You could say, I want to get X amount of email subscribers per month, and start setting, again, even like micro goals under that for how you can get that done. You can say, I want to send X amount of emails or messages to relevant contacts about my book or about my journey per month. Another thing too is take a course on Amazon ads, take a course on Facebook ads, take a course on YouTube marketing, or fill in the blank with whatever platform or technology technology platform that you haven't yet mastered or that you want to master. That can be a great goal too, because that can help you, again, get to that ultimate point of sales and reaching more people. So
Mm-hmm.
all of these things are what authors can be thinking about in 2024, is saying, what have I done in the last year? How can I realistically say I can do more, I can push one step farther in 2024, because that's what you can start to measure, and where you can start to see, all right, well, I was doing 2 posts a week on LinkedIn in 2023. Now I'm going to do 4. You can see how many people was I reaching per week then, and how many can I reach now, knowing that I'm doing 4 posts a week. So that's, I think it's going to differ, the goals are going to differ per author based on who they are, what type of book they're writing, who they're writing it for. But I mean, at the basis of it, it's thinking about what are going to be some of these like realistic goals that you can start setting for yourself, and keeping in mind too, for some people, it might be, I want to reach 100 people this week. It doesn't have to be these huge viral numbers that people boast about on social platforms or on email. You can set something that's going to be realistic for you. If you're just starting off with your email newsletter, make it a goal to get 5 new subscribers for the first month, because that can sometimes be a good, digestible, realistic milestone to hit, and work from there. And don't let the fact that you might be setting smaller goals discourage you from still setting them and going for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of hit our favorite word on the podcast. Any returning listener or watcher knows consistency is key. So can be consistent first, and then worry about raising the amount of times you're posting or doing something for whatever works best for your schedule and bandwidth, really.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go through some of the goals that we mentioned and break them down into trackable components and KPIs for authors to consider. And maybe then talk about resources they can figure out to help them figure out what's reachable, what's actionable, and what's realistic for them. So we'll start with social media. So social media, a good goal might be, I don't know, what do you think?
I mean, I would say looking at the frequency that you have done, and then what you realistically can do. I think that's a great goal. I think too, there's, in terms of realistically tracking, there's several analytics tools that you can sign up for. Or if you're using a social media scheduling tool, a lot of them have built-in analytics, so you can use these tools and resources to help you track and see, all right, this is increasing, or maybe you've hit a plateau. Is there something to reconsider? But then there's also just old school style, and just keeping a spreadsheet and saying, all right, I'm every Monday at 8:05 a.m., I'm going to go in and just track my numbers and see how everything's going. And so yeah, so I would say like you can mark how many posts you did per week. You can mark, you can see in almost every social platform the impressions your posts got. You could track how many engagements, like comments or likes that your
Mhm.
posts have gotten, and just all of those little things, and just see how that can how that tracks and how that progresses on a monthly basis, maybe sometimes on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
um yeah, I think with social media, it's just keeping an eye on the engagement metrics, and just how many people you're actually reaching. And it doesn't have to be your follower account, because on a lot of these platforms, your posts can go beyond your followers. So while that can be an important metric for some people, really take a look at the reach and the impression data, because that's realistically who's seeing your content. And on LinkedIn, I think I'm somewhere around 1,300 or 1,500
Mhm.
followers, but I can see that my posts, just depending on the week and how many posts I've done, I'm usually getting somewhere between like 2,500 and 3,000 impressions. So my posts are being seen by sometimes almost double the people who actually follow me. So those are really important metrics to be keeping an eye on, because people get really discouraged sometimes with, oh, I only have so many followers. But you can actually get your book, you can get your message, your brand in front of a lot more people when you're getting consistent.
You took the word right out of my mouth, and I want to emphasize that follower count isn't the best metric for social media all the time. It's probably one of the easiest to track because it's right there at the top of
Yeah.
any page that you're on is the number of followers. And that's easy to track and see my follower growth. Have I gained followers, lost followers? At what growth rate is my platform
Mhm.
going? What direction? That being said, engagement is incredibly important, and it's something that we notice as professionals in the book field and in the media field. This person might have 10,000 followers, but if they're only getting 300 likes per post, and that tells me like, oh, that's actually a pretty small percentage of their total follower count that's actually interacting with this post. So something feels off there, something's not quite lining up for me. So something to keep in mind is making sure that all of your content is actionable, or people can interact with it. So making sure there's a question they can respond to, or advice that they can discuss, or a topic that they can jump in the comment section or share with people. Something like that is always going to be really, really important. So those are really great KPIs. And to look at what's reasonable for an author on each platform, I love checking in with Hootsuite blog or HubSpot blog. They do a really good job of, I want to say, like frequently throughout the year, maybe even quarterly, updating what their recommendations are for Instagram, for LinkedIn, for X or Threads or anything like that. Here's the kind of average likes you should be getting per post, or based on your follower count, this much engagement, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like I mean, Hootsuite's great, and I mean even just doing like a quick Google search, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll even share data like the average growth that you can receive on a platform on a maybe monthly basis, because I think that would surprise a lot of people to see, oh, you know on these platforms you're going to get an average of like 4% growth. And so that can sometimes be easier to say, oh well, if I should be aiming for then 4% or whatever whatever the different platforms are kind of giving out as an average, that's easier to say and take a lot of pressure off of yourself to think, oh, I've got to be doubling my follower account within a month. But like, no, like realistically, you can really start checking off these goals and growing by
Mm-hmm.
looking at some of this data and making your goals according to what the average growth percentage is on some of these different platforms.
Yeah, most growth is not exponential, it's incremental. You want to a little bit at a time is good because it's consistent growth over plateauing. Let's talk about newsletters.
Yeah.
One of the goals I think of is your newsletter subscriber count, but a big one I think is underestimated is the click-through rate. Whatever
Yeah.
you're promoting, making sure people are interacting with it. And I was reading something about there's always new recommendations on the number of hyperlinks you should be including, the number of graphics, how do you avoid spam folders, that kind of thing. But what are your thoughts on newsletter goals?
Newsletter goals. I mean, I think click-through rate is a good metric to look at. And I think even open rate is still important
Mm-hmm.
too, because it's different newsletters might have different goals. For some of them, you might be using some of your newsletters to just simply share valuable information, help grow, grow trust between you and your subscribers. So open rate is important for that aspect of how can I get people to, start reading this content and let them realize, that I do have expertise in this certain area and I can kind of give them advice, on this topic. But click-through rate, it's tough because it's going to change based on how many subscribers you have. But I
Mm-hmm.
would say, I mean, it's tough. But I would say if you're getting at least like a 25% of your followers or of your subscribers who are clicking through, I think that's a pretty good place to start. And
Mm-hmm.
trying to see, maybe testing out different call to actions, testing out different types of messaging, to see if you can get that to increase, to have more people engaging and following through. And in terms of like graphics and everything, I've always been one to say it's okay if your emails look super basic.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with authors before who they want to get all fancy with the designs and do all these crazy templates. And I think, like, to me, the emails that do the best and the ones that, even as a consumer myself, being on multiple newsletter lists, the ones that I enjoy the most are the ones that just look like an email. So for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, it can be super basic. It can be white background with just text that looks like it's coming from a friend or looks like it's coming from a colleague. Typically, if you need to include an image, like let's say you're doing a cover reveal or something, there's always going to be like those exceptions. But in my opinion, and there might be people who disagree, but I'd say, like, keep it as basic as possible and make it
Mm-hmm.
all about the value of the content.
Exactly. Content is key, especially in newsletters.
Yeah.
What about website goals?
I'd say website goals for some authors is, step one, get a website.
Yeah. Create a website.
I think there's still a lot of authors out there who don't think that they need a website. So I think step one is getting one done. And again, it can be I mean, it's got to have good branding to it, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be overly complex, and it doesn't have to have all these crazy transitions or modules. Like, it can still be a very kind of basic content driven website that has good fonts, good colors that are connected to your brand. But I would say one goal would be recheck your SEO,
Mm-hmm.
and see how can it improve. Is there anything that you can edit to make it better? And again, this can go back to maybe one of the, like, specific goals that I mentioned earlier of taking a course. There are a lot of really great and really low cost courses out there that could teach you the basics of SEO for whatever platform your website is hosted on. So
Mm-hmm.
that could be a goal, is saying, all right, I want to make sure that my site is as optimized as possible for Google searching, and really really like anything for more people to find my website on an organic basis. And so I would say SEO is like one of the number one things to kind of have as a goal under kind of the website column and making sure it's all good to go, all set up properly. And then too, you can increase traffic to the website through ads as well, which for some authors, that is going to be a critical goal for them in
Mm-hmm.
2024. For some authors, it where it will fall on the kind of the list of things to get done, it might be a little bit lower, but again, it's probably going to be like case by case basis on doing paid spend to get to the website. But SEO for sure worth it, and something that should be prioritized if you have a website.
One of my big priorities when I'm looking at websites for authors is flow. I want to make sure it's traversable, that you can find what you're looking for, and that one thing leads the user to the next thing, to the next thing, especially when the author's goal is speaking, new clients, consulting, something for their business, and the book is like a business card for what they do for work. I want to make sure that the book, people are searching the book, are then finding it on the business website, and then there's an actionable button that's learn more about my consulting, or hire me to speak, from like hire me to talk on the content of my book. Make sure that they can find all these other things that you're doing by searching your book, so that it's not ending there at your book. They can then
Exactly.
continue to interact with you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like making it as easy as possible to navigate, and and that's where it can be helpful too, just sending it to friends of yours who are outside of your industry or maybe
Mhm.
outside of your niche, and saying, hey, how do you feel about this website? Like, do you think would this be an easy site for you to navigate if you were looking for a book like mine or for a service like mine? Because that can be sometimes the best way to figure out, does this have the right setup? Like, am I actually sharing the right type of information? Because I think we all
Mhm.
get a little bit blind sometimes to when we're kind of deep in the design phase of,
Yeah.
is this actually going to work, out in the real world?
That's why I like looking at a bounce rate. Are they jumping on the website and immediately jumping off? Are they spending some time? And
Yeah,
there is a kind of a happy medium. You don't want them spending like so much time that they're obviously digging for what they're looking for, but you don't want them just jumping right off. So there's a sweet spot. It'll differ based on your goals and your website and who you are, but that's something else to consider when you're setting up goals.
yeah, absolutely.
Then let's talk about sales. And I can't mention book sales without talking about book reviews, because they go so hand in hand. And my favorite trackable measure for reviews is 15 reviews the first month of publication, 5 reviews every consecutive month after that, just so that you are continuing to tell the world and retail algorithms that your
Yeah.
book is relevant still. So even if your book was published 6 months ago, 5 new reviews means people are still reading and relating to the content.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reviews, I feel like it's that area that people will struggle with the most. Because it's the first hurdle is getting people to buy the book. And then after that, it's like, oh, well, now I gotta go back to them again and ask them to leave a review. And that can sometimes be the part that it can take several weeks and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like several months to get people going up and leaving the review on the different retailer sites. But it's it's important. I like the numbers that you share, because I think that falls in line with just a lot of industry standards.
Mm-hmm.
At one point there was the magic number like 50 reviews, and I think it's not something that's ever been either proved or debunked. But so that can also be like a number floating around there to say, yeah, at the end of 3 months, 4 months, like can that be a benchmark to hit? um so I would say with reviews, I mean, it's just reaching out to, again, maybe 5 people a week who purchase
Mm-hmm.
the book, and just giving that reminder, hey, just letting you know this is a really helpful aspect for my book promotion. Could you take 2 minutes to get it done? So that's it. You can kind of set some of these other, like, again, like micro goals along with it. Is all right, I've got, I can reach out to one person each business day, or, I could just say every Monday I'm going to email 5 people, or, send a, social media message to
Mhm.
5 different people and make that ask. And that's how you can start doing that, kind of getting those like realistic goals of saying, all right, if you can get another, 5 to 10 every month by just doing some personal outreach, then that's great.
And there's a bit of a feedback loop, pardon my pun, for reviews and book sales, in that the more books you seed, the more reviews you get, the more information the algorithm has, which leads to more full price book sales, which ideally leads to more reviews. And so you want to be consistently giving away books too. If say 20% of your network comes through with a review, and I would say probably about, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around 10-20% of people that read a book will actually review a book. So the more books out in the world, the more reviews you're likely to get without you having to ask for them too. So that's when we're constantly recommending giving away books through Goodreads or Storygraph, or just to your network at speaking events, to friends and family, at work holiday parties, offices, whatever you're doing, or even ebook deals are incredibly useful, because even if you are seeding the books for a discount, you're still getting them out there for potential review, which then comes back informing full price purchases in the future. So it's just something to consider. You might want to check in and see, what kind of promotion am I doing every quarter? Even once a quarter, do a giveaway. Once a quarter, do an ebook promotion. Once a quarter, do something that seeds books with your ideal audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's where too, having a launch team
Yes.
can be helpful. And because that's like saying, if I can get 20 or 30 people who can sign up and, help me spread the word about the book, you leave a review. I mean, you could think about it, if that's 20 or 30, complimentary books that you're giving out, these people are also reaching, hundreds of other people with the book. And so it really has a strong benefit of, seeding out several copies, because there's so many good benefits that can come out of it, reviews being one of them.
And then my last point I'll make on that topic is, if your goal truly is to change someone's life or make an impact in the world, what better way to track it than through the feedback you're getting in reviews? How are people feeling about it? How are people thinking about it? What are they getting from it? That's a great way to see how your content is landing. And if maybe something is off, then maybe you're not reaching the right audience. Maybe there's a piece that you're missing, and that can inform what you're doing in the future to reach the people that would be impacted the most.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really great. How can our listeners and watchers learn more about you?
Yeah, so you can learn more about me and what I do by going to bookrockstar.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Aryn Van Dyke. So that's a great place too to connect. I try and share a lot of information, tips, advice on LinkedIn as well. But on my website, I've got a blog too, which I try to put out as much valuable content as possible, so that authors can take that first step and start to learn a little bit on their own. So got a great blog up on my website, and as well as just kind of shares a little bit more about me and the services that I offer as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was super fun, and I'm glad we got to connect.
Me too. And listeners, viewers, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.